Thanks for coming. I'm going to talk about some stuff. I put together some material. I just picked a bunch of topics to talk about. I didn't want to overdo. I kind of talked about my written stuff is kind of less marketing, more general, how to run a practice, my tips, mostly learned through error. But I would like, because I'm so inspired by all the marketing talk now, because I've been listening to it for 2 hours, I want to talk. I'm going to go out of order. So you've heard all this marketing stuff, and we get it all the time. I don't know how many emails I get a day telling I'm going to SEO your website, and I'm going to do this and this, and then the Facebook guys talk about all the stuff you can do, and Tyson gives you all these great things that you can do. How do you sort that out, and how do you agenda set that? Because it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to me. So one of the things you do, and I mentioned this in the materials, is you got to, what I would do is, well, let me ask you this. Who here has read a marketing book before? Wow. So when my firm broke up last year, and I started a new firm last year, and I realized when I broke up that I'd never read a marketing book. After all the marketing I had done as a PI lawyer for years and years, I hadn't read a marketing book. And I said, how stupid is that? I'd listen to people come in and try to sell me ads here or this here, or do a Yellow Pages ad here or this or there. But I was basically kind of throwing money after stuff and then kind of halfway tracking how well it did or its efficacy or what kind of effect it had. So it was really all over the place. So what I tried to do is I tried to learn marketing. And lawyers hate marketing generally. Okay, there's a couple that get into it and like to do, because we're going to go practice law. We go to law school. We're going to live in our ivory tower, and we're just going to be smart, and we're going to make a bunch of money. Well, that's not how the world works. You got to go out and get your clients and get your stuff. So I surrendered to marketing and surrendered to really looking at that even when I didn't want to. So anyway, that has been kind of transformative for me in a way. And I don't know whether I still make the same mistakes, but at least I kind of analyze them and try to figure out what I'm going to do. So from marketing, that's my experience. So for marketing, what you want to do is you want to figure out who your audience is and what time and what money you're going to put to it, and then do it. Sit down and do it. The life and law practice is an action item. It's not just sit around and think, I should do this, I should do this, I should do this. And you sit around and a year goes by or 2 years goes by, you haven't done squat. So what you ought to do, what I would do, is figure out what you want to do, make a manageable steps. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and sit down and do it. Are you going to do a 4-year newsletter where you write it out, you print it, and send it? Those are terribly effective. They really are. Written communications to people. Are you going to write thank you notes? Are you going to do birthday cards? Are you going to get a client management software like Infusionsoft that Nadeem and I and Tyson use and put out content like that? Are you going to, if you're going to do that, first you got to go through your list, and getting through your list together so that you can market to people is a terribly difficult thing. There's a friend of ours who his company is just putting together lists for people. Tyson has this app where he can scan your business card. This business card, he can scan it, and it's immediately in his system, and then he markets to people. So there's Facebook. There's this universe of stuff. It's overwhelming. So what I would do for my presentation today is New Year's resolutions for 2017. What I would do is I'd pick a manageable, something you can eat and digest. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Pick it and do it. And then assess it and then see how it works. You don't have to do everything. You just have to do some things. So if you're going to say, I'm going to do a Facebook advertising scheme, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to target personal injury plaintiffs lawyers, and I'm going to give them and I'm going to do a Facebook ad, and I'm going to spend $50 every 2 weeks, and I'm going to write an article, and I'm going to change the content, and I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it, da-da-da-da-da-da. That's great. That's a good way to do it. Whenever you talk to marketing people, Jim Hacking's going to talk this afternoon. He's so smart at this. Every time I've talked to Jim, he says, well, what are you doing with your current list? I say, not enough, because we never are. We have a treasure trove of leads in our offices, the old email addresses, the old clients that we don't talk to enough. So one of the first things that marketing people say is, get your own act, stuff together. So maybe go to your own list. How am I going to market to my current people? Am I going to send them an email once a month? What am I going to do to them? So those are some ideas. And then kind of do those and get them done and see how they work, and then change your system, and have the courage to change and then make it better. You also may want to do this. I'm going to do a little Facebook. I'm going to SEO my website better. I can't take all 11 of Tyson's ideas, but you know what? I'm going to try Snapchat, or I'm going to try something, or I'm going to do something. So there's an idea for you in terms of how to pick a piece off that you can do it. And also, I'd read some marketing books. Tyson had good examples. There's Great Lawyer Marketing by Ben Glass is another good book. Those are good too. And simplifying these systems and doing it. And then you got to create the system around the marketing to make it work. If you're not tracking your leads, you're not going to know how it's going to work. And you need a good system for when the calls come in. How are you going to handle them? What are you going to do? Are you organized enough? How are you going to take the time to market? When do you market? I sometimes spend you spend so much during the week and the day returning client calls and doing all this stuff. You don't have time to market. Tyson told you how much time he spends. When do you do that? Because you don't have time. One of the things I do is I try to, a lot of times I spend like the 11 at night to 1 a.m. time, which sounds weird, but it's after everybody goes to bed and I can't sleep. And so that's when I do it. And nothing makes me sleep easier than sitting down and returning emails or looking at staff and doing that. My staff they're like, you did all these emails. Maybe you're a morning person, you get up and do it. But one of the things, and I'm going to let me talk about time management. So I talked a little bit about time management. We have to zealously guard, and I'm going to come back to case management systems and other things. Point 8 on my little presentation on page 4. Guard your time. It is you have to guard it, and because we are pulled every different direction, and with our families, with our work, with everything else. When I was a puppy lawyer and I worked at a firm, I used to put files in the chairs, my guest chairs, so no one would come and talk to me, so I could get work done. Because all these people walk around, sometimes in big organizations, they want to sit and talk about your day and blah, blah, blah. When I come in my office, I get my game face on. It's like, and it's a little disconcerting to people that work for me, but if you work for me with me for a while, you know. I'm going to ask you how your day was, and I do care, but I'm there to work. I'm there to get stuff done. I'm there to return calls, get stuff done, move projects, change the orders of things. In our fast litigation business, the priorities change all the time, and you have to guard your time. When you sent an email to Tyson, he sent you an email back that said, I only check my email at 10 and 4 o'clock to be more conscious and present with my clients. Something to that effect, right? Him and Jim read the same book, and they're right. So they don't return their emails. They do it twice a day, and they only do that. And you may not want that return bounce back email. I joke with them. I say every time I email them, I get that back. But you got to guard your time, because otherwise your time's going to get sucked up into all this little unimportant stuff versus the really important stuff. So I didn't, years ago, I read this book. You ever hear of Stephen Covey, First Things First? There's two things that I take from him that I keep, that I retain. One is he has this, he's got this grid. And he does this grid. This is my kid's dry erase board marker that I found in my house this morning. So he goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is importance. And this is time to get it done. And what he says is we spend all our time in quadrant 1. It's the little stuff that is really easy to do. It takes a second and it's unimportant. so-and-so won't give me medical records. Well, we're going to write them a letter. We're going to call the place. And I did this yesterday. Mercy won't send me records because my client's deceased and the daughter who hired me for the wrongful death case isn't on the death certificate, so I can pick that up and I can spend that. Or this lien needs to be reduced. Or this client who calls 7 times a week wants to get an update and it's the same thing as it was a month ago. And we have all these little tiny things that they're not important, but they don't take very much time. And we want to do those because our ADHD part of us wants to get those done. Check those off the list. They're really easy to do. But we should be spending all of our time in quadrant 4. This is the stuff that's the big picture stuff and takes a lot of time. It's the hardest thing to do. You have the big and I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm a personal injury lawyer, so I got the big complicated med-mal case or the other case with all these different parties, and I have to sit down and I have to wade through this much paper to figure out what's important and what's not. You know what it's like, and that's the thing. That's the last thing that gets done, or the discovery that needs to get out. I need to go review these depositions. I have a trial coming up. I need to get this, and this done. It's so hard to let that sit because you got all this stuff sucking up. The other thing in life in general, it's hard to get to quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 is, am I happy in my life? Do I have the kind of practice I want to have? How's my relationship with my spouse and my kids? Where am I? How's my contact with God and my spirituality? No, we don't talk about this at CLEs, obviously, but that's the important stuff. That when you sit on your deathbed, you don't sit and say, "Man, I wish I would have returned more of those client calls." So, consciously working on yourself to get to quadrant 4. Is the challenge, and that's what you're doing today. You're here learning about marketing and advancing your thing and taking your practice and taking 3 hours to do it rather than being at your office doing little stuff. So that's good that you're here, but creating those little things and being conscious of that. The other thing that I take from Stephen Covey and I write it. I have a thing down there called lists. The other thing that I do, one of the things that I do for my serenity. Among other things, try to do in fits and starts is lists. So when you have, and I have this little book, and people who work for me, I make them, when they come and talk to me, if they don't come in with a pad and they're not going to write it down, I send them out, I make them come back in. Because I forget stuff all the time, especially as I get older. So I make them write stuff down. And then what I do is I make lists of stuff. I got to do the discovery in this case. I need to call this client back. I need to work on my marketing. I need to do this, and this, and this. And I keep these books and these running books of lists and lists and lists. What does that do for me? Nothing if they're just lists, because then they get confused, right? And actually, so what I do, the other thing is you prioritize your lists. A, B, and C. A is immediate, B is intermediate, and C is long-term. I need to figure out my Facebook advertising program and get my act together and do that. That's C. That's going to take me some time. Get medical records, return this call, go out and sign up this client, and then you have the intermediate stuff. Schedule this deposition, get the discovery out in this case, and that kind of stuff. If I write stuff down, I sleep like a baby because then it's not running around in your head, right? So I write stuff down, and then you prioritize. You do A, B, C. You do the A's, the B's, the C's, and then you number them, subdivide them underneath that. So there's a little trick for everybody in terms of running your firm. But that all goes to guarding your time. And what you want to do is you want to put in a system to guard your time. It just doesn't happen. You have to do it. So you have to say, you guys can't bug me for an hour, or I'm writing a brief. You got to close the door and do that. Or you have to only return emails at certain times, or this, that, and the other thing. I will often have times where I'm saying, you guys can't come to me with these calls or deal with this stuff because I have to keep my eye on the ball. So there's an idea about guarding your time. Any questions so far as I'm going through these ideas? All right. So the
I have a comment there.
Yeah.
The list making, I at least find once I make a list, I actually realize what I can delegate to somebody else. If it's written down, I say I don't really need to do that at my hourly rate because I'm hourly. My paralegal can do that and should do that. And then it comes off my list and gets done by someone else.
I'll write stuff down and then I'll put it on then I'll take a picture of it and I'll email it to someone, which is great. And that's a great, thank you. That goes to number 9 on my little list of New Year's resolutions is figure out what you're good at, what your time should be on, and then are you missing that page? That's because you only paid $25. You didn't pay the $100 price, so you only get a certain amount of pages. You got to figure out what you're good at and what your time should be spent on, and what you should. I find when I get grumpy in the office is when I'm spending all my time on all this little shit. Rather than the important stuff they ought to be. I'm dealing. I turn around. I didn't get anything done. I spent my whole day doing this, that, and the other thing. So, create systems and hire people to do the stuff that you don't want to do. Now, that is easier said than done because if you have to go hire more paralegals and an accountant or other people to do stuff, that costs money, and I'm cheap. You can tell by my fancy video camera, and the price we charge for these CLEs. But really, you will make more money getting an extra paralegal and getting extra lawyers and doing this stuff than otherwise. And I counsel people all the time on this. I say, listen, you guys got to do the discovery. You got to do this stuff because I need to put my brain on how to win the whole case in a deposition. Every time I walk into a deposition case, I'm winning the case. Casey jokes, she makes fun of me because I walk out the door. I say, I'm going to go win this case because that's my job. In every deposition, I'm going to go why else am I doing it? Why am I taking that depo unless I'm going to go win that case right now? Figure out how to do it. If my time is spent up all this other little stuff, it can be very challenging to do that. Now, these are great. These are all, these resolutions that I'm barking at you guys, they're also my resolutions because we got to remember the way the people work is that the best laid plans, right? So these are all things that I still have to work on, and Tyson does, and all these other people. So, and even the great trial lawyers, you're always working on your craft, and you're always working on your systems. So when you decide what you're going to market, so when you decide what system you're going to do for this, that, or the other thing, or when you decide that you're going to hire people and allocate and do different stuff, remember that you're going to lose that. You're going to forget that. So you got to keep refocusing on that. One of the things that I learn more and more as I get older is I remember in my 40s I was relearning all these life lessons that I'm sure someone told me in my 20s and I ignored. But so you got to keep working on these systems. And sometimes it gets tiring. You're like, God, I don't want to teach another paralegal how to do discovery. But you got to do it. You got to keep working on these systems. And the more you work on it, the better you are. So hire people and allocate stuff. And lists are a good way to do that. I make lists on purpose. What I have is we're going to talk a little bit about systems where the rubber meets the road a little bit, not to say that thing twice. But what systems do you do to have this all in place? I've used Time Matters. I've used Clio. I've used different stuff at different times. I find that most of the case management systems and other things folks have, excuse me, I don't use 99% of it. I just use simple stuff. I want calendaring. I want case status reports. I want phone messages. I try to keep it simple. So what I do now is, and it changes. Casey will tell you, my systems change all the time. I'm always trying to improve stuff. So what I use is I use Google. I'm all on Google Drive now. I do everything with Google, and my case management system, my case client relations management system, CRM system, is Infusionsoft, which interacts with that. I have a spreadsheet where I have all my cases. It's on my phone. It can be anywhere. I can access it anywhere. I have my case name. I have the type of case. I have which of my associates is assigned to it. I have my to-dos column. I have a running log of everything that's happened in the case. And then I have some check marks when the case was last, whoops, I went into something. When the case was last reviewed by me or someone else, when you last status that case up, and whether it's in Infusionsoft and updated in Infusionsoft, because that keeps my lists going. Because I'm constantly picking up files and finding that person isn't wherever they're supposed to be. So we always have to work on that. This may be imperfect, but this is what I do. So what I do in a litigation practice is you have the cases that you don't touch for a while, right? It's the bane of our existence, me, and it's one of the points I have in here is and that's the quadrant 4 case. It's the toughest case. So make your toughest phone call first. I'm going to jump and I'm going to be back to my system. The two other things that this helps me with is. I learned long ago, make your toughest phone call first. It's a great piece of advice because you have that case and you have that client that you do not want to deal with. They're the worst client. They have no gratitude whatsoever and they never will. They're always criticizing you. And they have it's the toughest liability case, the toughest damages case. It's the case that you have not figured out the solution to that problem. That's the toughest case. And we all have them. And that's the phone call you make first, and that's the case you work on first. Because as soon as you handle that case, you figure out that statute of limitations defect, you find the expert in this case, you have that, and Susan, I don't know all your world, but you have the intractable problem of an ex-husband and wife who aren't going to get along and you just don't know what to do. Those are the ones you handle first. And then the rest of your day is easier. The other thing is that remember that it is the cases we don't take that make us successful, not the cases we take. So, and someone told me that adage as a plaintiff's lawyer. So, it's really true. If it was a dog with fleas when it came in the door, it'll be a dog with fleas when it leaves. They make the joke in employment cases, and I used to do a lot of employment. I do less now. That after you interview your client for the first time and they leave, sit back and relish that moment because that's the best your case is ever going to be, right? And we get that. We did a deposition yesterday where the client said he was bedridden, and then defense counsel brought in all these Facebook posts about him fishing for the 2 months after this, multiple times after this thing. I don't know if he knew what bedridden meant. So choosing these cases and don't being afraid to reject cases as we got this lead. Man, I know he didn't get medical for 3 months after this car crash, but boy, I know, this is a good divorce case. The other person has money. I know they don't have any money to pay me, but you know what? I'm going to take this case. And so don't be afraid to reject cases. So you can create some systems or rules for that. If it isn't a if it's not worth $10,000, I'm not taking that case. That car crash case. If the person did not have medical care for within a short period of time after this accident, I'm not taking it. If it's a medical malpractice case and its value is not $100,000, I'm not going to take it. I don't know if you have similar rules like that. But in the med mal, sometimes I fudge on that a little bit. But every time I do, I live to regret it. Every time I violate my rules, because no good deed goes unpunished. And I've had these cases where we do all this hard work, and these are long fought cases, and then you settle the case, and then the client says, "This is all I get? Why did I do all this?" So don't be afraid to get rid of those cases or reject cases, and then how you reject them. what I tell people is it's not the kind of case I can add value to. You can go do something else. Marketing, you always want, and if you have leads that you end up not taking, or you have a conflict, you don't take them or something, one of the great marketing tips is you always give them something for free. You always say, I can't help you, but here's the number for legal services. I can't help you, but here's the number for the physician review board. I'm blanking on the name of it.
Healing Arts.
Yeah, exactly. The Board of Healing Arts, where you can, here's the number, and I literally Google it. Here's the phone number, write it down. You can do that. Or I'm sure you say, here's 3 other divorce attorneys who may want to take your case. Or here's your statute. Here, do this, this, or this. I have a book on my website where it is how to decide whether or not you need a lawyer. And I'll tell people that. I say, you got one ER visit. You don't need a lawyer. Go call, get your medical, send them in. I can't add value to that case. And so you give them something for free, even when you get rid of them. In terms of marketing and keeping your leads, I have people who I have touched over the years, not physically like our president-elect, but I have that, who later call me after sending me 3 really bad ideas or cases, and then they call me. I'm like, oh wow, that's a great case, cool, man. So Tyson said at the beginning of his, the more you give, the more you get. So there's an idea for you. So back to my systems. I was going to make another point on that. Oh, talking about, before I jump around too much, as I'm prone to do. So my friend of mine, who I share offices with, he's my smartest and most successful friend. He's a trained lawyer, but he happens to be a businessman. And what he told me was, he goes, why don't you go through and cull your cases? So what he said, and it's great, I never thought of it, he said, if you're a business, periodically you'll go through and you'll take your 10% of your worst clients, your worst properties, your worst accounts, your lowest performing or lowest revenue generating areas of your business. And if you're, whatever your business is, a smart business practice is to go through that and cull it and get rid of it. So he said, why don't you go through and get rid of 10% of your cases periodically? Well, that's a great idea, because those are the worst 10% of your lowest cases. How much of that time does that take from you? And I don't necessarily do it exactly. Nadim's smiling because he probably knows that I don't quite do that. But
none of us do. We should more listen to our gut feelings more, though.
That's true. You end up being right, don't you? Always. I tell you, every single time, and no good deed goes unpunished. I mean, a lot gets. We get a lot of things back from helping and doing that good thing, but you gotta. The person who does not have gratitude for what you're doing is never going to change. I have some clients that I do an okay job, get an okay settlement, and they love me and they think I'm the best thing ever, and I get a Christmas card and blah, blah, blah. I have other clients where I killed myself, I did a great job, I put blood, sweat, and tears, I got a great result, and they say, why didn't you get me more money? And so you're never going to change that level of gratitude. Is that person, that client, that bad attitude, grumpy person, after your case is over, are they going to be an ambassador for you for 5 years and give out your card and send business to you? Is that smart marketing? No, never. In fact, they'll badmouth you, or they'll get on your website and rate you really bad, and you can't do anything about that. So think about culling your cases. Think about that case selection, because that also goes into guarding your time and doing that, and doing those things too. So these systems, the systems are category 4. They're not category 1. Putting in systems takes time. You should see Tyson's systems. It's amazing what he does. He has these spreadsheets. He's got these things where he's got all these criminal cases where, and Nadim's seen them too. Like, these guys will get these email reminders, and you got to be at court and do all this stuff. And then he goes to court and they're not there. And they say, well, you never told me about it. And he said, oh yeah, I sent you emails on ... and you were supposed to be here on blah, blah, blah. So spending the time, and it's the hardest thing to do. Believe me, I hate doing it. Because we want to practice law. We want to talk about marketing, or we don't want to run our business. We just want to go do brilliant legal shit. But setting up these systems saves you so much time down the road. So having these systems and I have a lot of systems, imperfectly as I do. Tyson has amazing systems. But so I'll have, systems when new clients come in, who calls them, what we do. I have these sheets every time we interview a client, every question you have is written down. I have my form new client letters. I have my form lien letters. I have my forms to get my demand letters, my forms settlement letters. I have a long memo on how to deal with liens, how to handle liens in cases, because as we know, it's a whole world unto itself. I've done a CLE on that, how to do it, different techniques to use. So these systems are in place so that you spend less time answering every little question. I have videos that I prepared these videos. I found myself telling my clients the same exact thing over and over in depot preps. So I videoed it. And now every time they have a deposition, here's your deposition. Have you guys done that yet? No? Nadeem, have you? Oh, anyway, have you seen my videos? All right, so and you steal them from me. Take them. Email me. I'll give them to you. They're also on my website. You copy them or tell your client to do it. I did a video with USAM about what a mediation's about, and they produced it and did this whole thing. I was like an actor in it, me and Debbie Champion. And now every time I do a mediation, I send that to my client, and it's professionally done, and they use it. So I have these videos about how to be successful in your deposition, and I send it to every client, and they come in. The first thing I ask is, did you see my videos? Because then they're prepped, and they've seen it. And some of your people are really worried about it. Some people, I watched your videos 5 times. I'm like, oh, wow, maybe I should have done a better job in them. But that gauges something, and then you eliminate time. Tyson does video training for his new staff and his people. He'll sit there and have a video camera on his screen. This is how you click on this, and this is how you do this, and this is how you do this. I have a forms folder on my shared drive where here's the latest 15 auto cases where we've done discovery. Here's the latest 15 med mals and stuff, because we do this stuff all over, again and again. I also have institutional knowledge between me and mostly Casey, where we'll say, now, what was the one case where we needed the designate deposition for a slip and fall against blah, 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 and we'll figure it out and we'll do it. So create these systems. Create your marketing systems, create these other systems, and then check on them intermittently to make sure they're working for you. Okay, so in terms of creating those, so then what I do, so what I do too is every 30 days I try to, and just to stress my staff out, I try to do it on Friday afternoons. That's a joke. But no, I'll go through all my cases. I need to see the cases. I need to touch them because even though they're here, I can't tell you how many times they're in the drawer, but they're not on here, or vice versa, or whatever. So I'll go through and I'll pull them apart, and we'll look at them. And we'll try to keep them up to date, and you're touching them. What are the two most frequent ethics complaints against lawyers? Lawyers Weekly. Lawyers Week. This is the Bar Journal
Came out a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Diligence and communication.
Always diligence and communication. Every single. It's 360 communication, 344 diligence. The next one's 185. So these are usually about 70% of the ethics complaints. Not that you have to worry about an ethics complaint, and that's always what your client complains about. I will have clients that they call every week. They talk to Casey or one of my lawyers, and then we settle the case, and they say, you never talk to me. I'm like, you're calling every week because they got to talk. They think they got to talk to you. It's not the same. They can talk to your paralegal a million times. So think about systems to handle diligence. And I sat on the ethics panel for 10 years, and that it was all communication and diligence every time. And the same thing with doctors. So when you get med mal cases, and half the time, way more than half the time, it's because the doctor didn't sit down with the patient and explain the or what's happening, and then they want to go sue. But if the doctor had better communication and talked to them, and now they're actually teaching that in medical. It used to be doctors would shut up, not say anything because they're worried about liability. Now they're actually going out and talking to folks about the problem and explaining it, and they're cutting their claims like crazy. It's smart, and that's not going to come in evidence anyway, because every state has a law that protects that, including Missouri and Illinois. So, although Illinois' discovery rules are a little different, think about that diligence in communication, especially if you're trying to run a large docket efficiently, or a small docket. Just be as efficient as you can in talking to these folks, sending them periodic letters, setting up systems to do it. You can set up on MailChimp really cheap. MailChimp is kind of my incubator that I have to use on my other stuff. There's a lot of things. You can go buy a MailChimp. It's cheap. You put in your people in it and you start sending them. You can set up an automatic email system. So I have a system where if they're a new client, I blast them. I have a new client letter. I said, why don't I put that in an email? I do. And then 3 days later, I have one that comes in and says, make sure you send me all your medical. And then the one that says, make sure you don't put on stuff on Facebook. Then the client yesterday didn't read that. But don't put stuff on Facebook, and make sure that when you're putting out stuff on Facebook, you make it consistent with what your story is going to be in your deposition. Then the next one is, make sure you get all your medical care. Go to doctors, blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes I attach links to blogs I have where I'll put a video on. You set that system up once, make yourself do it the first time. It's automatic. You click them and then it automatically goes out. And then I have other nurturing ones over time. If it's an auto accident, I'll send them stuff every 10 days and then 2 weeks and then 3 weeks and then every month. And I'm working on getting that for the other things. So those are systems you can put in place. And then do systems for phone messages and following up. I have it on a Google Sheet. I created a spreadsheet. Every phone system goes in there. And I also make my people, whoops, that's money. I make them do and some of this is old school, but I make people take messages on those carbon pads, and then they give them to me, and I stick them in my pocket, and these are my driving home phone calls. Because I live in the county, and I work downtown, and I sometimes the traffic, and so you get 3 phone calls done on the way home. Another little how to run your business New Year's resolution type of deal. You want the other systems you need obviously are statute of limitations, ticklers for discovery, all that stuff. I use Google Calendars, and we put it in, and it comes up. Everybody uses it. Everybody in my firm uses my email. My email's like open everywhere. So when I get a mean email from somebody, they all see it, but whatever. So everybody accesses my email, accesses my Google Drive. We share videos with the people on Upwork like Tyson does. Another great website is called Fiverr with 2 R's at the end. Everybody does stuff for $5. You can dictate stuff and you could upload it to Fiverr, and then it comes back transcribed. Or Upwork the same way, it comes back transcribed. So if you're doing, think about that. Do not SEO your website or get people to review you on these things. You got to be careful with that, because and you also look at when you're using these resources, they're great and cheap, but get the guy who's been reviewed 300 times and has a 5-star rating. Don't get the person who has 2 reviews and is a 1.5, because that gives you some instant when you're using these folks. If you use like Google review my website or blah blah blah, and Google knows their IP addresses, it won't give you any credence for that. And you got to be careful who you're letting in. Be really careful who you let, like Tyson said his system, be really careful who you're letting in to edit your website, okay? Be very careful with that. And you got to be diligent about that. And that's the the corollary to me letting everybody use my email is that we had a thing where my email was hacked in March, and I had to go and send everybody an email and say, don't open an email, blah, blah, blah. So you got to be careful with that. There's a give and take with that. So I hope some of these have been helpful in terms of systems. And in terms of in terms of, but creating these systems and doing these things, if you make them manageable and not overwhelming, because we have a very overwhelming practice in what we do, and those are the last couple of things I'll talk about, is creating these systems. So when I'm working, I have my game face and I'm barking, you got to get this done, we got to get this discovery done, blah, blah, blah. But then at 5 o'clock, everybody goes home to their family. And I almost never I work myself at home on Saturdays, but I never make my people come in on Saturdays. I just don't. Now we have projects and we do stuff because the point of doing all these things and being successful is to have time with our family and our lives and what we want to do. So the other thing that takes constant vigilance is, I talk about, and maybe I talk too much about it, but lawyers really don't talk about this, is talk about relaxation and your own mental health and your own serenity. And we have a very stressful business. We fight other people all the time in litigation. We have to compete against each other for business, which is very stressful and do all this. And then we have to run our business. And actually, we have 3 jobs. You got to be a lawyer, practice law, you got to run a business, and you got to market that business. And that's overwhelming. And lawyers and doctors have the highest rate of suicide and the highest rate of addiction of any other profession. We're a self-selecting population of folks that decided to go to law school and compete in that environment and then go do what we do. So remember to relax and remember to, and it's really one of the hardest things to do. And making lists works for me. So remember to take the time out to relax and work on your mental health and your life happiness, because that always gets shoved to the end. I always sit there and go, man, so the weekend's coming, I'm like, I haven't gone out and run since last weekend. Your time gets away from us. So in terms of structuring and guarding our time, we want to set out time to do that. But relax in your life and your work. Find ways to de-stress yourself. Make it part of your regimen, because that'll become the last thing. And you'll turn around and you'll say, I'm less in shape and I don't take time to relax. I used to meditate. I learned transcendental meditation in college. I never do it, even though I'm sitting there preaching at you about what to do. And I'm preaching at, this is better, this is good for me as it is for you. So whatever it is, whatever your deal is, take time to relax and then work on your serenity and gratitude. So what to me serenity is figuring out what we control and what we can't control and figuring out the difference between the two, which is something that you heard Tyson allude to. Is if you do these, this can be overwhelming, marketing and how do I run my business and how do I do all this stuff. There's no way I'm going to do that. That's why you pick off bite-sized pieces. What can you do and what you can't do? I can do this. I don't know if it's going to get me more cases. I don't know if it's going to work, but at least I'm going to try. And you can control what you control. You can't control what you can't control. But as you find out, as you get more gray hair in my beard that apparently my wife tells me is coming off any day now, is you learn that these things come. And these things come to you. So the business success, the better managed firm, the better practice, the happier clients. These things come in time if you do these basic things. So I'm ending now. I'm right at my time. I have a little bit more time. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
I have one.
Good. At least I got one question.
On guarding your time. You said you frequently teach young lawyers how to interrupt clients and zone in on what is important.
Thank you.
Because you have the person that just likes to just...
I'm a master at this. I know I'm obviously really shy about telling you how great I am, but so lawyers go strike that. I'm in a depo. Clients go on, and I have this. You got to cut them off, and they love it. Clients love it when you cut them off, because what you're showing them is that you know what's important and what's not important. You have, I get these calls, the med mal calls. A lot of people constrain them, but it kind of has to be me. And I cut them off. I say, what did the doctor do wrong? Well, let me tell you what happened. No, what did the doctor do wrong? And if they can't tell me that on the third time, they're done, and I'm not talking to them. So you got to learn, and I do this in deposition preps all the time. I teach deposition prep. Hacking will tell you that I came in and depo prepped his client. I changed his whole case one time. It was great. But you got to zone in on what's important. I did it yesterday with this guy. It was a slip and fall case. My associate had prepped him. I came in and said, the first question I'm going to ask you is, don't you have to look out for your own safety when you're walking? Because I know the other lawyer, John Rahoy, on the other side, and that's his first question. He and I went to law school together. It's like a joke. Don't you have to watch what you're doing when you're walking? Yes, you do. Well, weren't you walking? Didn't you see the shake? If you were watching, you should have seen the shake. Well, the trick in that is that's not the answer, because when we walk around, we scan. Because if I'm looking at the floor, I'm going to get hit by a truck, right? So we scan, and we have peripheral vision. So I'm looking at the shelf, but I can still see my hand down here. So you have to do that. So there's different ways to cut off clients, and there's different ways to cut off potential clients, okay? I have a series of questions right away. I zone in on auto case. Was it the other person's fault? Yes. Have you gotten medical? Yes. Do you have insurance? Yes, because with tort reform, you don't get pain and suffering unless they have their own insurance. And then that sounds good. Bring them in. That's good enough for me, and they want to tell me a story. I say, that's great. We can tell it, but you can tell me, but you're going to come in and meet with me anyway, so let's do it then. And I find, and I can give you other examples in med mal, product, slip and fall, other places. Slip and fall, did you see it before? How did you fall? Did you really fall? How did you fall? Did you report it? When did you report it? When did you get medical? Is the symptoms the same there as you were later, as you had later? When you start interrupting them and zoning in, you sound like no one wants to do it because you don't want to lose the lead and you don't want to be rude. But as soon as you do it, they think you know what you're talking about, and you're zoning in. And I tell people all the time is that one of the lawyer's jobs is to separate out the wheat from the chaff, to see what's important and what's not. There's a million facts, but there's only a couple that frankly I'm really interested in, and that they'll figure it out later why it's so important that they didn't notice the defect in the ground when they were walking, or why it's so important that they know. I talk about distances in every auto case. Everybody gets distances wrong, so we spend time on distances. No one knows why, but someone's 10 feet is not someone else's 10 feet. So, and after you kind of do this for a while, you figure out what's important and what not in these deals, and you try to zone in on that. Does anybody have challenges with interrupting people like that? I interrupt them all the time. I say, no offense, da-da-da. And then the other thing, and especially in vetting new cases, that's really one of the most challenging, is I'll say, they'll talk to, and I did this yesterday. I'm doing it today. I know you're telling me that. I'm sorry I'm going to interrupt you, but here's the deal. And if they can't answer my question, I don't want to represent them, frankly, okay, on a PI case. If they can't, if it's the third time and they can't tell me what the doctor did wrong, if you can't articulate that, because then it's not, frankly, not a case 99. And I don't know, in other hourly types of cases, the other way to do it is charge them by the hour. So everybody wants free advice for the phone, but I say, you want to come and talk, pay me $200, come in and talk to me for an hour, and then you see whether they really want to come and see it. And I don't do that in PI stuff, but anything hourly, I'll give them some time on the phone and say, listen, this is something that the systems, so you can create a system where people can go online and schedule themselves automatically for you. Tyson does that. Jim does that. You can get online, and Susan, you may do that too. You may want to, is you can do programs where they can get online. They can pick a time. You can say from 1 to 5, I'm meeting with people. Here's a link. Get online and put yourself down and come in with $200. Click this thing and do it on my credit card to do it. Yeah.
On the hourly, what we do is the office makes it clear that you get 15 minutes on the phone, and then my cutoff, because it's family law and they'll tell you every wrong that was ever done, is what is your goal? If you're not on a divorce, but on a modification, a contempt, or restraining order, what is your goal? What is your end game? What do you hope to accomplish? And if they can't figure out why they're calling you, or if I can't figure out a cause of action, then let me suggest blah, blah, blah. Thank you for calling if I can help in the future.
Yep. And
time is money.
Exactly. Time is, that's why you got to guard your time. Yeah, and you can, and I always say, the way I let people off easy is I say, that's not the kind of thing I can help you with. You don't say, you don't have a case, or your case sucks, or anything like that. You say, that's not the kind of thing I can add value to. That's not something that I can help you with. You should go do that on your own because you'll put more money in your pocket. Or on hourly stuff too, on commercial stuff, you give them an idea how much it's going to cost, and that's a business decision about whether they're going to do it. But you got to be, and those are the cases you reject. I have people who I have called me, and I've rejected 3 cases, and they finally call with the good one. And people end up respecting that because they figure you're not just a yes person, you're giving them the true advice and the counsel because of which they came to you. Any more questions? Yep.
Gary, what's this Infusionsoft? I'm not sure.
There's a class of. Thank you. Great question. So there's a kind of computer program called CRM, or Client Relations Management. Isn't that CRM? Is that what we call it?
Yeah, but if you've got to ask what it is, it's not. I would not.
Infusionsoft is not for lawyers. It's not. It's for businesses. But can I finish answering?
No, very
When you get around
powerful,
to it.
but it would take you probably 5 years for it.
It takes when you got to get your list. There's other ones like MailChimp. Constant Contact is advertised on NPR all the time. You'll get emails with Constant Contact on the bottom. You can start one of these. Start with a MailChimp or something like that. It's a way to connect with your clients, to be in front of your clients. Does anybody get emails from me every 2 weeks? That's why you're here. I do that. So what I did is I've done this. I have to create content. I make myself do it every 2 weeks, and I do some stories about how do you market. Jim could talk. I didn't talk about this. I'll just do it. Market yourself personally. Go out and give cards to everybody. Lose your introvertedness, because we all have it a little bit. I never hire the same movers twice. I never hire the same guy that works on my house twice because I want to get the new person in and give a card. I give the card to hope you never need to call me. You got to get out of that. I only want to be a lawyer and I want to go in and read books and be intellectual. You got to get rid of that. You got to get out there and market yourself. You got to do it all. I mean, that's part of getting business. We want to be great lawyers, but we got to get the business in too. A way to do that is with these types of computer programs that let you mass email to people, set up these systems where, so if you're tagged in my Infusionsoft as an auto accident, you get an email. I have a campaign built out, and these are all words that are in this, but Constant Contact does it. These other programs do it. But Nadim's right. You get your marketing plan together, get your list together, get your other building blocks together before you're ready to go to that level, because you just won't use it.
I misunderstood. I thought it was some sort of like a client management tool or
It
something.
is.
But
It is.
Where you can kind of keep that,
It is as well. That's what I'm saying. It's a whole universe.
that's what I was
Client
thinking it was.
management, marketing.
It is, but it's not
automation.
going to tell you when's your discoveries due. It's not going to put something in your calendar to appear there or this and that. It's it really is a marketing tool that you can adapt somewhat awkwardly to this business. Some ways it works great, sometimes it doesn't. But MailChimp's a good starter too. If you want,
depends what you want to do. Yeah.
you want to start. I'm gonna do you know what? In 2017, I'm gonna do a newsletter every month. I'm gonna write it. I'm gonna get your list together, put it in MailChimp, start doing your newsletter, and then people are gonna there's a whole e-marketing to people is its whole universe, because the servers that they sent, it's going to be marked as spam. There are some firms that won't. Pitts or Snodgrass can't get my emails because their servers have marked, because I do all this stuff. They've marked me as spam, and so every case I have, they do all this like, we don't get your emails. Well, sorry. So there's a lot of things to think about and worry about when you do that. Not that I don't know your business. I don't know if you're ready or not for that. Great if you are, but maybe start. I started with MailChimp. I did newsletters for many years at my old firm, and I kind of wanted to change it up to see if I could be have more efficacy.
Okay.
Dennis?
Very basic. What's Google Drive?
Google Drive is a place where you can store. So, do you have a Gmail account?
I do, and I don't use it.
I just rated you. Oh, by Google. So while we were sitting here, yesterday I went and rated all you guys on Google. I reviewed you. If I haven't reviewed you, before, I went on Google and I reviewed you. So now, you're welcome. When someone calls you up on Google, it's going to say how many times you reviewed and what your star reviews are. So while we're sitting here, I just sent you guys an email with a link to click on to review my firm. So that's one way to thank me for doing this today. Tyson mentioned that. But these reviews, well, what I'd encourage you to do is get these networks of people that help you cross-market and that stuff. So Google has a lot of tools for free as part of your membership. Google Mail, Google Drive, Google Sheets. These are Google Sheets. They're Excel spreadsheets in Google that you can share them with everybody. I'm doing a Christmas card list. I worked on my list for, you think you're never done with lists. I worked on my Christmas card list for like a week and a half. It was a Google Sheet. I shared it with my guy, and now he's sending out 3,000 Christmas cards are going out today. Google Drive is documents. I can save a Word document on my C drive on my computer, or I can save it on the cloud on my shared drive. And then I can share that with people. So I can share it with Nadish, and I can share it with Gino, and they can edit my videos in India and then resave them on the same place, and then I can get them off. And they can't get to my other stuff. It's a way of sharing stuff. Those videos in that case that we worked on together, those were shared on Google Drive, weren't they?
I think so.
There's Dropbox is the same thing as Google Drive, but it's just a different function. But Google has different tools. There you go.
Can I ask you a follow-up?
Yes.
And based on the tools, would it make sense? I have a kind of a dormant Gmail account. Would it make sense to migrate my professional account onto that Gmail account? Because I would then...
What's your professional account in? Gmail too?
No. It's sbcglobal.net.
I don't know. I can talk to you more about it, but I think you do not. It used to be that you want to have familylaw.com and you want to have Susan Ward here and you want to have this and that. They're all pointing at each other. I don't think that's true anymore. Now you want to have everything in one place. You want to have it streamlined. You want every time people are reviewing you, contacting you, touching you, you want it to be one place. Google's the gorilla here. I mean, why go anywhere else? I kind of surrendered to it, and I just put everything on Google and kind of make it easy.